Good evening. My name is Thomas. Thank you for joining our live interactive telephone town hall we're hosting tonight's event to give Congresswoman Spanberger the opportunity to hear directly from you and answer your questions about the issues facing Virginia's veterans, their families, and their caregivers. As I mentioned, this event is an interactive forum. Congresswoman Spanberger will be taking as many questions as she possibly can during this event. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your phone keypad at any time, and you'll be placed in line to speak with a member of our staff. They'll take down your name and where you are calling from. The next time you hear your name, you'll be live on the call, and we'll be able to ask your question directly. You can also ask a question by submitting one through the portal below our online streaming player at spanberger.house.gov. Again, that's spanberger.house.gov/live. If you're watching on Facebook Live tonight and wish to ask the Congresswoman a question, we encourage you to visit that online streaming portal so you could submit your question. Additionally, if you would like to receive updates from our office via email, please press *6 on your phone keypad at any time, and an operator will collect your email address. We could receive a lot of questions during this event, so if we are not able to address your question, please call our district office at 703-987-2180. That's 703-987-2180 during normal business hours. Again, if you have any questions throughout the event, please press *3 on your keypad or type them below the streaming player. Now, please welcome Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining. I'm Abigail Spanberger, and I am proud to serve Virginia's 7th District in the U.S. House of Representatives. I want to thank you all for joining tonight's event, which is focused on how we can better support Virginia's veterans, military families, and service members. And I look forward to taking many of your questions this evening. To the Virginians on the line who have served, are currently serving, or have cared for a loved one who has defended our country, or the families who've supported a loved one as they've served our country, thank you for your sacrifice and thank you for your service. Tonight, before we get started, I'd like to share one update about a recent legislative effort that I have taken in direct response to some of the concerns that I have heard from Virginians. Last month, I joined the Healthcare Fairness for Military Families Act, and this is a bipartisan bill that would level the playing field for military families by allowing kids of service members to stay on their parents' TRICARE plans until the age of 26. This change would bring TRICARE in line with the existing rules that exist for private insurance plan under the Affordable Care Act. And it's a challenge that I have heard from many military families across our district. There are several types of common sense changes that I am looking to make for our service members and their families, and certainly this is a straightforward and obvious one. Tonight, I'm really excited that we have guests from the Virginia Department of Veterans Services joining us. For anyone who's joined us for a telephone town hall specific to veterans or active duty service member issues, you'll know that we've had guests in the past who provide just a wealth of information related to what's available here in the Commonwealth. During this event, we will hear from Ben Shaw, who is the Central Regional Director of the Virginia Veteran and Family Support Program. We'll also hear from Guy Dinkins, who serves as the Northern Region Benefits Director. Both Mr. Shaw and Mr. Dinkins have joined our conversations in the past, so I want to thank them for once again joining us to share their expertise and help answer questions. And additionally, we have Megan Altizer joining us for the first time tonight, and she serves as the Regional Program Manager for Virginia Values Veterans. Welcome so much. Welcome to you. Thank you so much for being here. And before we begin, I want to remind you that my team is here to serve you. If you or a loved one have a specific request or a challenge with a case before the VA or any other federal agency, please do not hesitate to pick up the phone, call our office at 703-987-2180. You can also contact my office at spanberger.house.gov. And with that, I look forward to hearing for your questions, but we're first going to get started hearing from Mr. Shaw with some opening comments. Over to you, Ben.
Congresswoman, thank you for the opportunity to do this again. This is fun, and I'm happy to be here. So for everyone's awareness, Virginia Veteran and Family Support Program within the Virginia Department of Veteran Services, we are essentially a human services arm to the agency. Our goal is to provide a lot of resource connection and advocacy for veterans and their families and their caregivers and their dependents to make sure they're aware of the resources available to them based on military service or those experiences, to usher or shepherd them throughout our own agency, to provide peer support, and just ultimately to strengthen and protect their marriages, their families, and ensure that they've landed on their feet post-military here in Virginia. Over.
All right. Thank you so much, Ben. We're going to turn it over to Guy Dinkins to give us an overview of his work. Thanks so much, Guy.
Good evening, everyone, and I'd like to thank the Congresswoman for inviting me to participate in this again. As Ben has stated, we have a great deal of fun, and we enjoy providing the information to Virginia's veterans. I am the Regional Director here in Northern Virginia for Virginia Department of Veteran Services Benefits. What we do in benefits is basically what the title says is we advocate for and educate veterans and their family members on the benefits that they have earned as part of their service. We work closely with the VA. All of our service representatives are accredited with the VA to file claims on your behalf, and we work closely with veterans through every step of the process. We like to say from cradle to the grave, basically, from soup to nuts, to make sure that your claim is processed properly and then advocated for with the VA to get you the benefits you deserve.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And Megan, over to you.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for having me. I serve as the program manager for Virginia's education, transition, and employment program called V3. What we do in V3 is we educate employers right here in the Commonwealth on best hiring and retention practices of the veteran community. We currently have over 3,300 partnered employers and organizations. And then a group of our team works with veterans, military spouses, dependents, caregivers to job ready them for employment. And our program works to bridge the gap between employers who are looking for veterans and military spouses to come to work and veterans and military spouses looking to go to work. So we look forward to working with any of you who may have that need. Thank you.
Megan, thank you so much. I'm so glad you can join us tonight because we frequently get conversations about people transitioning into the private sector and out of the military. And so learning about the work and the services that you all provide, I think is going to be really beneficial to the discussion. And with that, we're ready for our questions.
As a reminder, this forum is interactive, and we'd love to hear your question. If you have one, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time to get in the queue to ask a question. A member of the Congresswoman Spanberger staff will collect your questions. And we have one from Barbara, and she wants to know, why do veterans' wives' benefits decrease so much when the veterans pass? We have more expenses after they're gone. It takes so much longer to get benefits.
Well, Barbara, thank you for this question. And I'm going to open it up to our guests who might want to add to this in terms of the experiences of working with veteran spouses, surviving spouses related to the benefits that they receive, unfortunately, after the passing of their loved ones. I will just say that we have helped many constituents in Virginia's 7th District after the loss of a spouse, ensure that they are getting their full benefits, ensure that they are receiving what they have earned through their loved ones' service. But if there's any other additional resources for surviving spouses, I'll open it up to our guests to talk about what might be available through DBS.
I could take that or start it at least. When we talk about disability benefits through the VA, they are attached directly to the veteran. So if your spouse is a veteran who has filed a claim with the VA and has gained a rating from 0 to 100%, that benefit paid out is paid to that veteran. Yes, there is a stipend paid for the spouse or dependent children that's attached to uh, that percentage, but once the veteran passes, that benefit stops. Now, there are ways for the spouse to continue to receive benefits after the passing of the veteran. Um, One is death indemnity compensation, which basically states that the veteran passed from a condition that he was service connected for. I'll use the example of a Vietnam veteran who has contacted one of the several cancers related to Agent Orange exposure, and that cancer was a direct cause of his death. In other words, it is on the death certificate, or a doctor will um, make the nexus between the veteran's death and that condition to the VA. Then the spouse can receive, the now widow can receive death indemnity compensation. I think right now it's around $1,800 or just shy of $1,800 a month. There are other ways that a spouse of a veteran can continue to receive benefits after the death of the veteran if death indemnity does not come into play. That would be through a survivor's pension, I believe. And there are a few other avenues, but generally, if we're just talking about disability, so if your spouse was rated at 100% and he or she is getting the $3,600 a month now, plus whatever the dependent add-on is, the spousal add-on is, that will, yes, stop once the veteran passes.
Guy, thank you so much for explaining that and walking us through that process of those breakdowns of what someone can expect. And if anyone listening has any specific questions about their own personal circumstance, please be in touch with my office and we can make sure that you have all the information you might need specific to the benefits that you are receiving, either as the veteran or as a surviving spouse.
Terrific. Let's go to Richard from Chesterfield. Hello, Richard.
Hello, Congresswoman Spanberger. I have to tell you, I continue to love your style and your approach. You engage, and I hope you continue. And but I want to go back to immigration. Disaster. I just can't understand why the border couldn't be shut down to reevaluate. I know we're not going to be able to sustain 10 million plus immigrants. The problem, I know Chicago, all these areas are having serious problems and asking the federal government for the money. It's kind of like, well, if the problem had not been created, if we had followed the normal laws, it's about 1.5 million a year, to spread it between countries, we would have not been in this pickle. And this pickle is not going to end for a long time. There's studies that show about 50, 60,000 a person is supporting these personnel. I know there's some good people in there, but my wife is Hungarian. I followed the rules about 10 years ago. We did a fiance visa. I'd known her for years. We did it. Cost us about $14,000. We hired an immigration lawyer in there. It's very difficult to do it. And we look at this going, how criminal. It's being handed to people. Now, I know people say, oh, they're really deserving and they want a better life. Well, I want to win the lottery too, but I haven't got there yet. But there were rules in place, and we threw the rules away. And I'm hoping, and I know the latest vote on still allowed, the latest bill that has come across, it's still allowed like if it got over 5,000 to 10,000 a day, and shut it down. Well, we don't need to have 5,000 to 10,000 a day. We need to go back to the old rules. So, your position on this?
Yes. So I And I'll just say, anybody who's watching on the live stream, I'm a note taker. So if you see me looking down, it's because Richard asked a rather complicated multi-piece question, and I want to make sure I get on to all of it.
Well, and if you miss, worry about it. Okay.
Well, this is good. My other guests can have a chance to take a sip of water or relax off camera for a minute, because this one's all me. This one's all me. So Richard, I want to thank you for bringing up a difficult topic, because you called the situation a disaster, and I would agree with you. The situation is a disaster. But let me walk through the pieces of what is broken and not working, the things that I think need to be done, and then the things that I am actually doing. And so just outlining what the challenge is, what the circumstance is our current laws related to immigration, the current number of visas that we have available, work visas, family visas, in particular, H-2A and H-2B visas. So those are the types of visas that a seasonal worker, working in farmlands across Virginia would typically use, an H-2A visa. There are just not enough of them. So there are pressures on the system, and there are jobs here in the United States with our really low unemployment rates. There are jobs here in the United States, so people continue to come in search of work, in search of a better life. And certainly, I think we are in an extraordinary country, and I recognize why people would want to come to the United States, but we are also a country of laws. And so on the immigration piece, let me kind of, to round out what I was saying, the current immigration system isn't working, right? People have a right to file for asylum that is kind of basic within our democratic system, but it shouldn't take 5 or 6 years for someone's asylum claim to go through, right? That is a measure of it being broken. Now, the answer to that is not, okay, we're going to do away with asylum within the United States of America. The answer to it is we have to fix the system. We have to, update the processes. We have to have more asylum judges, immigration judges. We have to recognize the stressors on the system. We also need to fund our border infrastructure. Right now, we are almost 2 weeks away from a potential, maybe a potential government shutdown. On Capitol Hill, I've been focused on, we need a full appropriations bills, but you may have seen out in the press that ICE is saying that if they don't get funding, if they don't get the funding that they need, they might be making choices on who they should detain or not detain, right? And these are folks that under the law, fall into the group of folks who should be detained. And the fact that because Congress, and I'm there, and I'm ringing these alarm bells on Capitol Hill, is fighting over funding, an entity and an organization like ICE may not get the funding that they need to do what they need. Fentanyl is an increased, horrific reality on the ground, right? Some of the challenges when I talk about how the circumstances changed over time, it is very different to try and bring in, kilos of cocaine across the border versus small shipments of fentanyl, which is highly, highly lethal in small quantities. And the technologies around how narco traffickers are pushing drugs across the border have changed over the years. And I say this because well before I ever went to Congress, at CIA, I used to track narco traffickers throughout Central and South America, their routes, their relationships, the work and the ways that they were trying to bring drugs into the United States. And before that, when I was a federal agent, I worked drug cases locally in Northern Virginia and DC. And so I keep outlining the problem, but let me get to some of the pieces of what we have to do. So the Senate worked together because everyone knows that we are in crisis mode as it relates to the number of individuals coming to the border, the number of people that Border Patrol are working to process on a daily basis. It's an untenable quantity of people. And so the Senate, in a bipartisan fashion, worked to create a bipartisan, not just funding supplemental, which is necessary, but actual law changes that would reform, change, update both our border security infrastructure and our laws related to immigration. Now, it isn't everything that I would do if I were writing the bill, because it doesn't do enough as it relates to agricultural visas. And I have long been a supporter of, co-sponsor of, and ultimately have voted for a bill called the Farm Workforce Modernization Act. But what the Senate came up with was a tremendous, I mean, frankly, in a generation, the most comprehensive type of border security and immigration reform that was potentially going to move forward. And unfortunately, before it even got to a vote in the Senate, and they were expecting a broad bipartisan deal, the Speaker of the House said that it was dead on arrival and told the Senate that he wouldn't even bring it up. That, to me, is an absolute abdication of his responsibility. If a bill can get through the Senate that receives broad bipartisan support, it should get an up or down vote. Now, Richard, I am continuing on. I want to get back to veterans topics, but I'm just going to say a couple more things. The question related to why doesn't he just shut down the border, presumably the he being the president, it's because there's actually no legal authority to do so. I'm sure you've heard talk of Title 42. So Title 42 was the parameters under which the executive branch, the president, both the former president and the current president, had the ability to basically close the border because of the public health emergency. Now that we are no longer in that public health emergency, those authorities, in fact, have changed. And so the Senate bill, as it was put forth, was giving, right, because right now the president doesn't have the authority, was giving the president the authority to shut portions or all of the border to contend with challenges related to immigration or perhaps the flow of legal items across the border. So that's why it was an element of it. It is in that bill. Separate from what the Senate has done, I'm a co-sponsor of a bill called the Dignity Act, which is a bipartisan bill, border security and immigration reform. And we continue to push that bill forward. Frankly, whichever one can come up for a vote and potentially move and eventually get to the president's desk, I will support. But the Dignity Act is, I think, a tremendous piece of legislation that has originated in the House. It is bipartisan. And frankly, it comes down to the fact that we need to do our jobs. We need to recognize that there is a major problem. It is not fair, frankly, to the individuals who want to come to the United States and dream of a better life here for our system to be broken. It is not fair to the men and women who serve in Border Patrol and ICE, enforcing our laws that are broken and antiquated and without enough funding. It is not fair to the communities that are working to ensure the safety and security of people who've come to the United States. And it's just not fair for us as such an extraordinary nation to rely on such broken and antiquated laws that are no longer working. And so it is not fair that to the American people that Congress has not aggressively taken this up. So I'll continue to call on the Speaker of the House to bring up any bill that is actually meaningful, bipartisan. And I say bipartisan because we need it to pass the House and the Senate and get to the president's desk. We need the Speaker to bring forth a bill that not everybody's going to love, but everybody's got to like it a little bit. That is the way that you actually govern and legislate. And so I thank you for raising this issue. I could easily talk about it for another 20 minutes, so I'll stop myself here, but I really do appreciate you bringing this one to the discussion.
Thank you, Richard. We are with Congressman Spanberger tonight, and we want to hear from you. If you have questions, all you need to do to get into the queue, press *3 on your keypad at any time, and you'll get your question answered. Let's go to William in Spotsylvania. William, you're on with the Congresswoman.
Yeah, how you doing? And thanks for having me. I spent 8 years. I spent 8 years in the United States Marine Corps, and what I want to address is, when military folks get out, they do something called a final physical, During my final physical, I checked a box, severe infrequent headaches. He was basically ignored. 14 years later, I've had a wonderful career, and I had a massive brain hemorrhage. I was at the right place at the right time. They did brain surgery on me. I now have something called left side neglect, which basically means my brain doesn't know where the left side of my body is in space. I have about 20 to 28 seizures a month. And basically, we're taking our service members and pushing them through final physicals like, we're going through a McDonald's fast food line. And my fear is, just like me, I almost died, is that we're, overlooking folks. And I am in the process of filing a claim now. I'm just in the very beginnings. But I'm in my research for the particular condition that I had. I found out also that there's something called military occupational blast exposure, and I've been doing interviews with the New York Times as well as NPR. And as I understand it, the military occupational blast exposure is also being looked at from very prominent senators. But I'm kind of looking at this, from a very broad view. That one, you've got military occupational blast exposure that I probably was exposed to because I fired shoulder-fired weapons, and then also every member of the military that's getting out is going through these final physicals and probably having their problems ignored, and I really don't want to see that continue. And I think this is kind of a huge problem that needs to be looked at all across all military branches. I just want to get your feedback on that.
William, I thank you for sharing your very personal story, and I'll begin by providing a couple comments, and I'll open it up if anybody else wants to speak to this issue. Thank you for sharing your personal story. I am so sorry for your experiences, but so grateful that you were in the right place when you had the health event, and were able to still be with us today. Thank you for your service, and thank you for the advocacy you're now doing. I want to make sure that my team has your contact information, because some of the things specific to your story I'd like to dig into a little bit, just in terms of understanding the process and determining in what sort of circumstances things go wrong. And so I'll want to make sure that we have your contact there. And so then at this point, and the things I'll do is I'll want to look into the process with in terms of what is the standard process, and ask some questions related to this particular circumstance, just to see whether there's problems in the system, or it's like you said, it's so fast that folks get overlooked. But I do want to look into that military occupational blast exposure as well. That's something that's not currently yet on my radar. But with that, I'll thank you again for sharing your story. I look forward to following up with you directly in the future. And I'll turn it over if anyone from the group wants to add anything additional from their experiences related to the final physical or the delivering of care once someone's separated from the military.
Congresswoman, this is Ben. I want to make a comment. William, I do appreciate you sharing. I had been through those final physicals myself, and whatever I checked on the box, I know that my goal was to get in and get out as quick as I could. And this is not necessarily what you do, but I think what many people do when they're sitting in that is, I would just like to get out of here as quickly as I can. I would just like to say what I need to say, answer all the questions they're asking me, and then get my DD-214 and head for the exits. And I understand that thinking. And then you in your case, you spent 8 years in an environment in the Marines, which was my background as well, where you're supposed to just suck it up, drive on, drink water, take Motrin, be quiet, and you'll be okay. So there's a real change in thinking from in the military, where it's mission first, you are second, family distant third, fourth, fifth, to go from that environment where you're not really that important. Your mission is more important, to suddenly completely reverse that. And you are the most important person in your universe. And your job as a human being is to self-advocate effectively for yourself, which is hard. I can tell you as both a VA patient and a non-VA, typical civilian healthcare patient, that learning to advocate for myself has been a learning experience. It's ongoing, actually, and even to the point of understanding that I need to go into the office, I need to basically jump up and down and complain about every ache and pain, everything that hurts. Because if I don't, it probably won't flag on anybody's radar, whether it be DoD medicine or VA or even civilian, to pull that thread and see what's going on, to run some tests, to do some imagery. So that is a learning experience for everybody getting out of the military, that complete change in thinking. To your comments about military occupational blast exposure, if you are looking for more information on what are your diagnoses and what to do about them, that is something with which our program can oftentimes assist. It's all free, it's all confidential. And of course, I would say benefits. The benefits team can also very much help you with a VA claim if you're not already working with them currently. Really appreciate you sharing, and to be young and fit and in shape and not have to think about health issues and then suddenly you discover you have to is quite a change. And I'm glad you're okay. I wish you were more okay, and we'd like to join in your fight to get you as okay as possible. Over.
You are with Congresswoman Spanberger tonight. It's an interactive telephone town hall, and we're addressing issues facing Virginia's veterans, their families, and their caregivers. Get in the queue if you have a question. Just press *3 on your keypad. Let's go to Melanie. Melanie has a question. Melanie?
Yes, I wanted to thank you guys first for this call. I am a Vietnam veteran's daughter. I watched my father struggle through the VA health system until he passed a few years ago, and I currently work in hospice. In my line of work, I am taking care of a lot of our older veterans who are struggling through the VA health system. What I consistently find, and I work in the Winchester market and those surrounding counties up there that typically have to cross the border over to the Martinsburg VA for all of their care. I refer a lot of patients who are struggling to get to those VA hospitals to call the VA Choice Program. And for a lot of the veterans that are struggling to even get out of their homes to find care, I tell them about the VA Homebound Program. But what I find most often is a lot of these veterans are not being accepted into the Homebound Program. And then if they are accepted into the VA Choice Program to try and find a local doctor to get adequate care, the doctors are refusing them or saying that, you know, the insurance is in pain or they're not taking new patients. So I see a lot of frustrated veterans. Are those programs being expanded? How are these veterans being educated about them? And is the criteria for homebound programs going to be changed to make it easier for these veterans to get the care they need?
Melanie, I just want to say thank you for your advocacy on behalf of veterans. We're all grateful for your late father's service. I'm so sorry for your loss, but so grateful that you are continuing to advocate for your patients today. On this one, I'm going to open it up to the guests to speak to Melanie's questions and comments.
Melanie, this is Ben again. Thank you for sharing your story. This to me is a bit of an extension of the last question. Navigating the VA healthcare system is often one of knowing the right terms and also knowing some of the in-depth, kind of the hooty-hoo rules and regs regarding VA. Specifically, yes, we have heard both professionally and personally the challenges people have had of getting referred under the Veterans Choice Program and the weird rules like, well, you're 40 miles as the crow flies, but because of the bay, you have to drive 90 miles to get. But that doesn't matter. It's 40 miles, so can't help you. So some of the regulations regarding the Veterans Choice Program. Under the Mission Act, our experiences have been that referrals to, quote, care in the community are much easier to navigate. And in the case of Virginia, and I think actually the eastern half of the United States, if I remember correctly, if your providers at VA authorize you to, quote, a referral to care in the community, end quote, a third party, in this case, a group called Optum, 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 will negotiate that appointment with whatever specialist or whomever you've been referred to, and they will handle all of that. And then they will actually text your phone, they will call you, they will mail you, they will use every means possible to keep up with you on the dates of that appointment. What still falls to the individual patient or a caregiver is understanding that that authorization has a time limit and it is not indefinite. So you may be referred to an appointment in the community. Just because they want to see you a year later doesn't mean the VA necessarily has authorized that appointment. So I would encourage you to go back to your VA provider to authorize, or in this case, reauthorize. If someone doesn't have it, I would strongly encourage that they get the VA's My Health, E as in Echo, Vet, My Health, eVet patient portal. It's like any other civilian patient portal. It is probably the fastest and most stress-free way to communicate with the provider, and oftentimes has very swift responses. And oftentimes they'll negotiate a referral to the care in the community without even speaking with anybody. You just simply have to make the ask. And the last thing is actually a recent discovery on my part. Optum, the third-party scheduler on behalf of VA for care in the community, also has their own patient portal where one can log in and see the length of authorizations and the dates of all future appointments. Melody, thank you for bringing that up. I really appreciate it.
We're going to go to Jean next. Jean, you have a question for the Congresswoman. Let's go to Jean.
Do we have you, Jean?
Yeah, Jean is. We'll go to Elston. Here's Elston. You're live with the Congresswoman.
Yes, Congresswoman Spanberger, thank you for your service and taking my question this evening. Affordable housing is a challenge for veterans in our district and Northern Virginia as a whole. You have veterans renting basements in people's homes that aren't even qualified as rooms for $1,500 to $1,600. What opportunities exist to help employed veterans find affordable housing? Thank you.
Elston, thank you for this question. I'm going to just begin by giving a kind of a broad federal look at what we're doing in the affordable housing space overall. Because affordable housing, certainly we're speaking within the veterans community and certainly within the 7th District of Virginia overall, we do have so many veterans who are impacted by the affordable housing challenges that we face. But it is a comprehensive problem pretty much across the state and across the country. So from a federal perspective, I continue to work on legislation related to affordable housing, increasing the supply of affordable housing. We passed a tax bill in the House that we hope will move quickly through the Senate that has multiple provisions related to increasing the supply of affordable housing. And Virginia, by the numbers, would be set to be among the top 10 states to benefit from that legislation. So that's the federal piece. And I'll open it up to our guests if there's resources within Virginia that they'd like to highlight.
Congresswoman, typically I don't talk this much, but this is kind of cool. So, Jean, to add to what Representative Spanberger noted, within the Commonwealth of Virginia, actually throughout the country, are programs of the VA funds through local entities. They're called SSVF grants, Supportive Services for Veterans and Families. They are not exactly aimed at helping people find affordable housing so much as they're aimed at helping people move from a position of about to be evicted or literally homeless, either to stabilize them prior to eviction or to get them literally off the streets, out of their cars, from under the bridges, back into stable housing. I do know in the years of working with those organizations that they have either an informal or produced by the VA ad hoc list of housing providers that they work with in their communities that are particularly willing to work with applicants who have perhaps less than ideal credit scores, who maybe have pets. But I think what we've also seen is that you kind of get what you pay for. They're not necessarily the best places to rent. So it's still ultimately an agreement between the individual tenant and whoever is the landlord, I guess. But they do have those lists of, if you will, more affordable housing. And there's also some regional things. There's some websites people can check as well for some opportunities. But where these things are most instrumental is, as rent has gone up and security deposits have gone up and people's risk tolerances has lowered, you have more and more money expected up front to get in the door somewhere for a rental. $1,000 plus rent plus $1,000 security deposit was maybe manageable, but now it's $1,500 in rent plus 2 months of security deposit. So what you'll find is that the supportive services and veterans family grantees throughout the country, and there's, I think, 5 in Northern Virginia, there's 2 or 3 that cover in the Richmond area, and so on. Those grantees will provide the funding to get someone in the door. So it's not a long-term solution. It's a Band-Aid, but if the barrier between you being literally homeless and in a house or a rental property is those initial get in the door fees, the SSVF grantees will oftentimes kick you across the finish line, with certain exceptions. You have to be below certain income thresholds. And our agency, the Virginia Department of Veterans Services, particularly through funding provided to us by the Veterans Services Foundation, can do much of the same in the areas where someone is not eligible for the same under the SSVF program. It sort of abstractly, hopefully, answers your question that there are resources out there, even as we all acknowledge that housing is becoming overall less affordable. Thank you.
Terrific. Just want to remind you, this is an interactive forum. We would love to hear your questions. Congresswoman Spanberger would love to hear from you. If you have a question, you can press *3 on your keypad at any time to get in the queue to ask a question. Let's go to Ronald in Stafford. Ronald, you're live with the Congresswoman.
Well, thank you for taking my call. I'm a 82-year-old Navy veteran. I was in the service from August of 61 to August of 65, and I had an exposure to radiation on the USS Long Beach right after it was commissioned. It was kind of messed up, and I was on it in the shipyard in Philadelphia because I was waiting to go to this communication school. I was TAD. That's a subject that you all should look into. People get abused when they're TAD. They sitting around in the barracks and somebody comes up to them and say, you need to go with me, and you get exposed to something and nobody knows about it, and then many years later the VA comes back and said, well, you don't have any record of you having done that. That's a big challenge. I think that's something that should be looked at. Now, as far as I'm concerned, I was exposed to radiation. I had thyroid cancer. I had prostate cancer and open heart surgery and all of that stuff, but I still made it to age 82. And this one claim that I have, every time I make calls, it gets shipped to another office. It gets moved to a higher level. It started off in one place, and then it went to Roanoke, and then it went to Jackson. Now they say somebody in Seattle handles that. I need help, please.
Well, you have called the right place. Certainly, my office can open a case and work directly with you. But I think this one is a question that Guy can also weigh in on. Guy, do you want to address this question?
Yeah. So you filed a claim. Are you in appeal now? Are you in the appeal stage now?
Yeah.
Or are you still
this particular claim has been in the system about 4 years. I had an attorney, and I couldn't get them to do anything, so I kind of got rid of them. And I just work with a group of people in Fredericksburg. We get together every Friday from 9 to 11 and try to figure out how we can help each other. So I got a guy that's helping me, but the problem is that we just don't have any strength, any say so, and we don't get calls returned. The lot of things that you say about going here and doing that, when you get to be in your 80s, and you start out with manual typewriters, you don't always know how to do all the new technology. that's a big issue too. We still have a lot of people who are alive in their 80s that need help. So, but in my case, I just would like for the Congresswoman to maybe make a phone call and ask them why they won't finish my claim. They won't turn it down because the lawyer that I had gave them case law saying that they had to pay me, and they had to do my claim, but then they just sent it to another office and said they were handling it. It just,
So
I just been going around.
Sounds to me like you're in the appeals process. If you're in the appeals process is ungodly long, unfortunately. I think they're working cases from 2019 right now.
Yeah.
And that's even after the Appeals Modernization Act. So there's still a backup. Now, what I would encourage you to do is come into our Fredericksburg office, since you said you're working with someone in Fredericksburg, and work with us. We're free. We have lawyers that we provide to you free since you're in the appeals process. They'll look at your case. They'll see where it's at. They can tell you, it's whether it's actually on a docket right now or not. And you won't be left in the dark. Like I say, all this is free of charge. You're not going to pay an attorney whatever percentage the attorney was going to charge you had he been able to win your case for you. This is a free state service. All our VSRs are excellent. They know what they're doing, and I would encourage you to go to the Fredericksburg office or any office within the state that you feel, and work with our VSRs, and then let our appeals team, if you are in fact in appeals, let them take a look at it and see where your case stands right now.
Let me wrap up this question and take this action. Sir, I'll have someone from my team follow up with you. And what we can do is we can work the case directly with you. We will ensure that we're answering some of the straightforward questions. We can do an inquiry about where things are. And then the types of really in the weed services, provision of attorneys and VSRs that Guy was talking about, we will make sure that we give you all of that information when we reach out. So I'll have someone from my office give you a call. When you called in, we would get your number. I'll have someone from my office give you a call tomorrow. And we'll go from there, make sure you have the information about where that Fredericksburg office is. If you want to work directly with them. Otherwise, we'll see what next steps either my congressional office can help you with, or where DVS might be perhaps the better fit to work you kind of step by step through the circumstance. So we'll follow up with you and take those initial steps together. And just a reminder again for anyone on the line, if you're having a trouble with the VA, we can do an inquiry. We can see where things are. We can't impact what the judgment is. We can't necessarily, we can't impact the outcome, but we can certainly make sure that we're tracking your case, that we're doing an inquiry. And if you need that extra level of help, like Guy was talking about, that's available through DVS, we will make sure that you're connected. So that you can get those services that, again, as he mentioned, are free of charge and available to veterans across Virginia.
A question from John for the Congresswoman. Is there a veterans preference system or process for state or local government jobs similar to the federal veterans preference system?
I'm going to see if Megan wants to take this one, since it relates to transitioning into the workforce.
Yes, sir. Excellent question. Here in Virginia, two pieces of employment that we have is one, Rights to Work Act, which ensures that National Guard and reservists returning from deployments or training are able to return to work under USERRA. And have protection under that. And yes, the answer to your question is yes. Commonwealth of Virginia employees do have veteran preference. That includes 5 additional points on your application should you indicate that you are a veteran, and 10 additional points on your application should you indicate and provide paperwork that shows that you have a disability rating with the VA, therefore being a disabled veteran. Also, when you apply on the Commonwealth website for any jobs, there's an additional category on there that you can select if you are a military spouse. It does not allow for any point additions, but it does allow us to advocating and pushing legislation in the direction for our military spouses.
And Megan, just to follow up, if I can add a little bit to his question, could you just talk a little bit more? You mentioned the relationships with businesses across Virginia. Can you talk a little bit about what's happening? You know, we know what exists at the federal level. You just explained what happens within state government. What are the practices and how are you all engaging with private sector companies across Virginia to make sure they know about the kind of benefits that come with hiring somebody with military experience and veterans who are looking to transition out of that military service?
Yeah, great question. So through the Virginia Values Veterans Program, we call it V3 for short. You can check out all of our employers that we have partnerships with. Over the last 12 years, the program of V3 was put in legislation officially 10 years ago. And our team here at Virginia's Department of Veteran Services has been actively engaging in our local workforce and our communities. We actively go out to businesses in Virginia of all shapes, sizes, and industries, and we essentially recruit them to partner with the V3 program. We primarily work with their HR and recruitment teams, and we provide education to these employers on how to find veterans. We provide them access to federal military installations for the purposes of recruitment of transitioning service members to help ease that transition from uniform wearing to civilian workforce. We continue that conversation with an employer at any length that they want to continue the conversation with us, where we have direct consultation with HR and recruiters, where we are acting as interpreters of veteran resumes. We are lending to them ideas on best practices, on how to clean up their career sites so that is more veteran and military spouse friendly, how to create retention programs within their own work environments, whether that be hosting events on Veterans Day or having certain small tokens of appreciation for the veterans and military spouses that are within their work environment. And that program has been wildly successful. Current date, we have approximately 3,400 partnered employers here in Virginia. Again, all shapes, sizes, looking for all types of skills. And we have direct access to provide veteran resumes, military spouse resumes directly to these employers to really smooth the hiring process for our veteran and military family community.
Thank you so much. That is really, really helpful to know that that exists and that you all are doing that good work.
You are with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger tonight, and we're answering your questions about the issues facing Virginia veterans, their families, and their caregivers. Let's go to Kelsey in Woodbridge. Kelsey, you're on with the Congresswoman.
Yes, thank you, Congresswoman Spanberger. I hope I can articulate this as well as I did beforehand. But I wanted to talk about the Montgomery bill, the 9/11 GI bill. I'm a retired Army veteran. I retired in 2018. I was able to utilize the tuition assistance program to receive my bachelor's degree while I was on active duty. So now I'm a retiree, and I have a son who's in high school, and I was wondering, has there ever been any discussion about veterans being able to transfer their GI Bill benefits to a dependent after they have left active duty?
I'll open
Hello?
it up if yes, sir. Yes, Kelsey. Hello, we're here. I was going to open it up if one of our guests want to address this one first. Otherwise, I'll work on it.
Yes, ma'am. I'll take this one. Sorry. Well, or yeah, my teammates can chime in. I will speak directly and indirectly to your question. One, maybe the other teammates and the Congresswoman could provide more guidance on what's happening at the federal level as the GI Bill is governed at the federal level. So any changes to being able to transfer benefits post-service would be occurring at that level. I will, though, mention that the Commonwealth of Virginia has what's called a VMESDEP program. For the sake of time, I'll be brief on what it actually does, but through the VMESDEP program, if you are a veteran and you have residence in Virginia, and you have a disability of 90 to 100%, at 90, you've got to be permanent and totally disabled. Then your dependents, if you meet that criteria, your dependents can go to any college, university, that's a state college or university here in Virginia for 4 years at no cost. So please get familiar with the VMESDEP program if you are not, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues for additional comments.
I think you covered it. Be honest with you, Ben, you got anything to add?
No, that was it. One of the most exciting things in our agency is the Little Old Virginia Military Survivors and Dependents Education Program, VMSDEP or VMSDEP. 90% or higher. There's some parameters, but 90% or higher. A veteran's spouse and dependents can go to 8 semesters of college free of charge at a state college or university. It is this little hidden program that is just this wonderful windfall to so many veterans and their families here in Virginia. And again, this is not only for the children of veterans, it is also for the spouses. So please, if you have any questions about that program, you can check our website or call any of us. We love talking about it because it's such a fun little program. That's it.
So we are coming to the end of our live event this evening, and we want to thank you for taking the time to join us for this important veteran-focused telephone town hall with Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger. We appreciate the opportunity to answer your questions. Congresswoman, if you want to just close.
Thank you so much. Well, I want to thank everybody for joining, and certainly I want to thank our guests for joining. Thank you for continuing to ensure that we can get the best answers out to people across Virginia's 7th District. Again, Ben Shaw, thank you. Guy Dinkins, thank you. Megan Altizer, thank you so much for being here. And as follow-up to this event, we will ensure that we have the resources that have been mentioned here tonight available online on our social media. And if you aren't signed up for our newsletter, I would recommend you go ahead and do that. It's spanberger.house.gov, and you can get our weekly newsletter. We send it out at the end of the week to give updates related to the work that I'm doing across the district and on Capitol Hill. But we also send out useful resources, links to the types of entities, organizations, and programs like those that we spoke of this evening. And so I just want to say thank you to everyone for joining this evening, to our guests. Thank you to the folks I proudly represent. Thank you for joining with us tonight. And if our guests have any last closing comments, please let me know. But again, on behalf of my constituents, the folks I proudly represent, I just want to thank the three of you for being with us this evening as well.
And if we were not able to get to your questions this evening, you can call our district office 703-987-2180. That's 703-987-2180 during normal business hours, or go to spanberger.house.gov. Thank you again. Stay safe. Have a wonderful rest of your week.